Welcome to Good Horses, stories of the American quarter horse. Behind every great rider, breeder, or trainer, there's always a good horse. The ones that challenged us, taught us, and left a lasting mark. In each episode, we'll share the stories of those horses, the ones that shaped lives, built legacies, and defined the heart, soul, and horsepower of the American quarter horse. This podcast is brought to you by the American Quarter Horse Association. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Good Horses podcast. Today, we're interviewing one of the most winningest AQHA all-around amateur champions. She's also a 19-time AQHA world champion. It's no one else other than Karen Evans Mundy. Karen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you, especially, of course, you're so accomplished in the horse world, the equine industry, and of course being a 19-time world champion. I'm sure you've got a really big trophy case. So is that where all of your buckles, trophies live? Tell us about your collection.
Well, my first husband that passed away 11 years ago and I built a home, and I wanted to have a room that is my trophy room. And so basically it is, when you walk in the house, it's the room on the right that may have been like a formal living room or something, and that is actually my trophy room. And I have all my trophies, and my sister, who is a interior designer by trade, I told her I wanted a buckle case, so she made a beautiful buckle case that sits in the center of the room. Unfortunately, they all don't fit in there,
I can
but
imagine.
they're just kind of, between those and other buckles, from other walks, like the paint horse world, that we had a paint horse, and Congress trophies and high point buckles. All those are kind of in there, but they've kind of like gone outside of it now. But yeah, it's all in a big room. I call it my trophy room.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. I bet it's really shiny.
Yeah, it's pretty shiny.
Yes. Well, of course, we're not here for the records. We're here for all the good horses that got you there. So let's go back to the beginning. How did you first fall in love with American quarter horses?
Well, it's interesting because my family, my father actually showed saddlebreds, and then his parents had world champion walking horses. Of course, we're from Middle Tennessee, which is the home of walking horses.
Yeah.
And so he never really showed walking horses, but my grandparents were involved. They had a big farm, breeding farm. And my oldest sister actually started riding hunters. And that's kind of how I got into showing. I have another sister that's a year older than me, and we started showing hunters together. And I had a hunter pony and showed. And then when I got too big for the pony, I got a horse. And that horse just happened to be a quarter horse. It was going to be my hunter horse, but it just happened to be a quarter horse. And I remember telling my mother, I was like, I would love to go to a quarter horse show just to see what it was like. So we went to a quarter horse show, and I was amazed. I was like, look at all these events you can do. You can jump and do all these other events. And so my mother was like, okay, you're going to have to choose between quarter horses or the hunter shows. And I just chose to do the quarter horse shows.
Yeah.
And that's when I started getting into not only the fences, but also all the Western events, because I just love doing all of it.
Yeah, it just sucked you right in.
It did. And I just, I just fell in love with it.
Right. So tell us about your first horse.
My first hunter pony or
First
just quarter
ever
horse?
one. Yeah.
Okay, well, the first ever one, the first ever was a horse that my sister and I got together,
Mhm.
and I'll never forget. It was an Appaloosa, and it was a 2-year-old, and we went and tried the horse out, and it bucked me off,
Oh, no.
and my father still bought it. So that was our first horse that was actually mine and my sister's. And needless to say, we didn't have it very long because it was a bit of a renegade. And then I ended up getting this hunter pony that was a nice pony that I showed. It was a large pony that I did the hunter shows with. And then the very first quarter horse I got was actually a horse that was by Wallaby, which
Okay.
old timers know who that stud was. And I showed that horse mostly in the over fences classes, a few of the Western classes, but I went to the youth world with that horse a few years. So that was my actual very first quarter horse.
Oh, neat, neat. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, youth world too? That's exciting.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So you're saying that your sister was in the hunter world, and was she kind of like a mentor to you when you first started?
Well, my oldest sister's 10 years older than me, so
Mhm.
by the time we were that age, she was kind of in college and, getting ready to move out when we were really into just starting.
Mhm.
But no, we just rode with some little, hunter trainers. So I wouldn't really say she was a mentor necessarily to me. No.
Yeah, yeah. So y'all had trainers that would
Yes.
encourage y'all
Yeah.
down the road.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So, what was your first taste of the all-around world? Like, what had you hooked? Of course, the American Quarter Horse can do it all. But what was that one moment where you were like, "Wow, this is what I want to do"?
Well, I've always liked doing a lot of different events.
Mhm.
That always fascinated me, whether it was the English events or the Western events. So just trying the different events. And probably the first time that I realized that I wanted to win something huge was Luann Nost, who was the very first amateur all around at the World Show. I remember when she won that award. And I remember thinking, that's what I want to win.
Wow.
And so after that, it was all about trying to figure out how to win that award.
Right.
What kind of horse did it take? The whole 9 yards. And that's kind of when that was my huge goal,
Mhm.
is to win that award.
Right.
And it took me several years to be able to get to that point.
Right.
And it's funny because I have friends, years ago, they were like, "Oh gosh, I would love to be able to win what you did." And I tell them, I said, it took me 20 years to get to that point. It wasn't an overnight success for me. It took me a long time to build up to be able to compete at that level and to win that award. So it was a long process, but I just love to be able to do a lot of different events.
Yeah, yeah, but how incredible. I mean, your record has stayed in place for 21 years. I mean, tell us about that feeling. I mean, it's gotta be incredible.
Well, I don't really think about it as like, "Oh my gosh, I've won all this." It is very humbling. And I kid saying I would love to die with that record and nobody beat that record until I die. But, it's really one of those things where it wasn't like I was trying to make a huge record, like, "Oh, I wanna win the most all-arounds ever." I love doing it. And I would, you know, get young horses and raise them up, and then I would train them, and, I would have help with the horses,
Okay.
and that was always my goal, is to win the all-around at the World Show.
Yeah.
And once I would accomplish that with that horse, whether I won it once or twice, then I would sell that horse and start over. I would
Mhm.
have another young horse coming up, train it, teach it, all the events that horse was good at,
Yeah.
and then I would sell it and start over. And I just loved the challenge. It was, and nobody put the pressure on me to do that. It was just something that I truly loved, and I love the challenge because I love the competition.
Of
That was a
course.
lot of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So your first ever all-around win was on He's a Honky Tonkin' Man, right?
Uh-huh.
So is that one that you, like, trained and eventually so tell us about him.
Okay, so actually he was I did not train him from the beginning because he actually bought him as a 4-year-old.
Mhm.
And, he was already trained in some of the events, obviously. He would do, like, the undersaddle, some of the Western events, but, um, he wasn't necessarily an all-around horse at the time, so we'd had to teach him to jump, which wasn't one of his better events, but he did it. And, so, yeah, he was really the only one that I started with that I did not buy as a weanling or a yearling.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he was the very first one, and I took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to be able to achieve the all around here,
Uh,
and then he was sold, and then I started with another one.
Awesome. So for that first all-around win, what was the characteristics about He's a Honky Tonkin' Man that you're like, wow, this one can go all the way?
Well, he was extremely versatile
Yeah.
because he could do the Western events and the English events very well. He actually, I remember qualifying him in 10 events
Oh
for
my
the World Show,
goodness.
10 amateur events. And that's before he was qualified in the Working Hunter and the Hunter Hack with, Western events as well. And they didn't even have the equitation over fences at the time. So probably we could have been qualified in 11 events. But we qualified in more things because literally I showed him in Working Hunter and Western Pleasure at the World
Mm,
Show. And I mean, he was a really good Western Pleasure horse. Not good enough to win at the
mhm.
World Show, but we qualified and he won a lot. So
Yeah.
to have a horse that could do that much of a, Western English crossover was pretty incredible.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard to find.
Yeah, exactly.
So from He's a Honky Tonkin' Man, you went to All in Silver, right? So how did you discover this horse? How did you find him?
Well, there was a local lady that bred a few quarter horses, and I knew of her. And she actually reached out to me and she said, "You need to buy this horse." So I went and looked at the horse and I bought it. And it
Yeah.
was, I believe it was a yearling when I purchased him.
Mhm.
And it was the same, like I'd said before, I just raised him up, till he was old enough, and I never broke my 2-year-olds because I didn't like that process. So I always sent it to a local horse trainer that would break them, and he did a fabulous job. And so, yeah, it was that. And then actually the one after that I got from the same person,
Okay.
the same
Huh.
breeder.
Oh.
So, yeah, it just so happened that she's like, "Come look at this horse. You need to buy this horse." And I did. And I said, "Okay." So I
Well,
bought it.
yeah, those bloodlines, they don't lie. Once you find a good one, you just gotta
Exactly.
stick with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was telling my friends about this earlier. I remember doing some research on you and I saw a classic moment where it was highlighting your wins with All in Silver. And I was like, wow, Karen is just like the equestrian Barbie. I mean, every single clip with you and All in Silver is just perfect. So definitely fangirling a little bit, but it's just so cool. Um, so out of all the horses that you've won the all-around title on, is there one that you remember that's like, wow, that horse knew he was a superstar and he just owned it?
Yes, there is one. Ask Me for Details was probably, I mean, and they were all fabulous horses.
Mhm.
He was the one I sold and got back. Then I leased him, once the lease program came into effect. But he was just one of those horses that was so talented at everything he did. And that horse was so kind. And I remember one trainer that worked with him some said, "This horse does not have a mean bone in his body."
Aw.
And that is the only horse I never sold.
Yeah.
And he is buried on my farm. So, and, I have a headstone for him, but he was just, he's just one of those one of a kind, um, once in a lifetime horse.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so he was, I showed him for a few years and, won quite a bit with him and then sold him to a girl. And the first year she showed him. And at the time, that's when I'd given up my amateur card and started training a little bit. And she won a world championship on him, the first year she showed him. And so yeah, it was he was the once in a lifetime, the one that was really true to my heart.
Yeah, the heart horse, yeah.
Absolutely.
Aw. So,
Absolutely.
did you ever let anyone else ride him? Sisters? Family?
Well, one time I let my brother ride him, when typical people that want to come ride your horse and they want to get on and like take off running. And I'm like, "Nope, we don't do that."
Yeah.
So,
Baby steps.
yeah, no, but yeah, no, none of my family really like necessarily wanted to ride him, but of course, a lot of other, I would let kids ride him and stuff. And he was a great teacher, and he, just taught a lot of kids, what it was like to ride a great horse.
Yeah.
And that was real special for me too.
Of course. And being able to give back, I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And of course, I'm sure you can relate. I mean, without people who shared their good horses with us, those American Quarter horses that are just solid, man.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Man, okay. So as far as more horses that you've had the pleasure of riding, Gifted Circle was one of your last world championship wins, correct? What?
Well, he was kind of one of the, Gifted Circle and Ask Me for Details were actually the same age.
Okay.
And I had them at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where I had bought Gifted Circle and I came out to the World Show. And that's when Last Detail was standing at Ron Horn and June Warren's in Yukon. And it was his first foal crop. And I remember asking June how the babies looked, and she's like, oh, we're so proud of the babies. You should come out here and look at them. And I remember going to her farm and I saw Ask Me for Details. And he was a weanling, but I thought he was a yearling. He was so big, I thought he was a weanling. And it was cold that day. I didn't even see this horse move. I saw him walk. And I said, I've got to have that horse. It was just one of those
divine things.
It was. It was like, and I remember my husband wasn't here. And I remember calling him and saying, well, I found this other horse that I'm going to buy. And he said, you already have one. And I said, I have to have this one. And that ended up being my favorite one of all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, Gifted Circle was phenomenal horse. He, was great at a lot of different events.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I kind of won what I wanted to with him and I sold him, and then I showed Ask Me for Details because he was actually, when I got him, he was one of those horses that kind of was, he was very sensitive. And if somebody had gotten that horse and pushed him too hard, he would not have been the horse that he was. And I had sent him to the same guy that broke my horses for me, and I got him back home, and I'm like, he just needs a little more time. So I focused on Gifted Circle more, and Ask Me for Details was, we just went slower with him.
Right.
So that's why I ended up showing him in the all-around after Gifted Circle, even though they were the same age and I had them, both as weanlings at the same time.
Yeah.
It was just kind of recognize, you have to learn to read each horse and not push them to where they're not ready, because you could ruin their career if you do that.
Yeah, it takes a very skilled horseman to be able to decipher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How did you juggle two, incredible horses at the same time? That's got to be hard because they've got so much talent.
Well, when I had Gifted Circle and I was showing him really in all the all-around events, and I was only showing Ask Me for Details just in the working hunter. So, basically you just haul two horses at the same time. And, but yeah, so, it really wasn't, it wasn't that bad, really. But it just, it's just one of those things that I wanted to have both of them because I knew what Ask Me for Details was going to be later. So he just was, a little, a couple of years behind.
Right.
So
awesome. And I don't want to skip, oh my goodness, there was one, Play My Song. I know that he was, he secured the all around for 2 years in a row. Oh, wow. So tell us about him.
Well, he was, I bought him from the same breeder that I got All in Silver from. And he was honestly probably one of the toughest horses that I had. Yes. He, he was very talented, but he was not a real easy horse, meaning he needed a lot of work. I saw the talent, but it was one of those things. Every horse is different. And I've learned over the years that whatever each horse needed, that's the time you had to put in. And if it took more work, then it took more work to achieve what you wanted to. Some horses were easier to get where you wanted with them. But he was not a super easy horse. I I remember we had to lunge him a lot.
There you go. Lots of come to Jesus
A lot of
meetings.
a lot of lunging, and unfortunately, when he was a 2-year-old, I was showing him, and I was at a show, just showing him in the hunter under saddle, and somebody ran into him. A horse ran into him in the pen. Well, that can be quite devastating to the horse, and they don't forget. So after that, it was really difficult to get him around in a flat class. So he would have to be kind of tired to kind of get him to lock in a little bit. So it was just one of those, and that really kind of was what set him off, was getting run over. And that's why it's, I mean, not that he was a super tough, hard horse. I think that whole situation set him up for being a little bit more difficult. And it was really just more difficult in the flat classes, where all the other horses were going around. He would just get a little more anxious unless he was a little tired. So, and I mean, a horse like him, he couldn't be super tired at every horse show because they, I want him to last.
Yeah.
But when we got to the big shows, we had to put a little extra effort in
Yeah.
to get him tired enough so he would perform like we wanted him to.
Oh, man.
There again, he was a cool horse.
Yeah. So with his personality, I mean, one that's so observant, what is the bread and butter of having a horse like that? You just have to be more patient with him. Just tell us about how you work through his personality.
Well, a lot of it was depending on the show and where we were, just like I said, making sure that he was tired enough for the event, because different events need different preparation.
Right.
And when you're at a regular weekend horse show and you're showing several events in one day, they become a little more prepared or get tired or sooner. When you're at the World Show and you may have one class in a day, the prep is different. So, trying to get that balance of where he needs to be at for that particular event.
Yeah.
And it depends on the horse show too. Every horse show is different. And I always said, we tried not to be our very best at every horse show. We wanted to work up to try to be our best at the World Show.
Oh, I love that.
And, it's and with any horse actually, is learning how to prepare them to be the best for that particular day or that particular event.
Yeah, I love that. So within your career here at the World Show, is there one favorite memory that sticks out to you that you'll just never forget?
Oh my gosh. Not really. I remember Sandy Vaughn was my quarter horse hunter trainer, and she would show my horses in the open classes. And because she actually is the one that taught them to jump, because I didn't like that process either. And I remember she showed Gifted Circle and asked me for details. And I think, it was the junior working hunter that year, and asked me for details, was the world champion, and Gifted Circle was reserve world champion in the junior working hunter. So
wow.
The same owner have world champion and reserve. I don't know that that's probably happened before, but it hadn't at the time.
Yeah.
So that was really a cool moment. And then, like I said, winning the all around each time was just, it's just really indescribable, and people would say, doesn't it get old doing that? And I said, absolutely not. Winning, whether you win the all around or win a world championship, it never gets old. And it was always extremely special for me, and just because that's what I always achieved to do.
Right, right. And you got to live into your idol's shoes, because your idols, of course, were all arounds, and wow, just living the dream. That's so admirable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, what are you doing? You're showing halter horses, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about
how I got into that.
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, my husband passed away unexpectedly 11 years ago, and I ended up getting remarried 5 years ago. And the man I married says to me one day, well, let me back up. We had a lot in common.
Oh.
He loved dogs and he loved horses. And his uncle actually showed Western pleasure horses on a very local level, but he would go to the shows. So he knew about the quarter horse shows and all that. So he says to me one day, he says, it would be my dream to show at the World Show.
Oh.
And at that point, I was like, after Ask Me for Details died, I said, I'm never owning another horse. Because, it was like, I was getting older. My husband died. And I was like, I don't know. Then he says that to me. And I said to him, I said, in what? Like showing what? And he said, halter. And my response was, oh, I don't do halter. So anyway, I thought he was kidding, really, but he wasn't kidding. So we found a halter horse and he started showing. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
So that's why I started showing halter horses. But quite honestly, it's not quite the same as the riding horses.
Right.
And the reason that I really quit riding is I had extensive back surgery.
Oh, yes.
And my surgeon said, you probably shouldn't ride anymore. And, after riding so many years and getting bucked off, fell off, dumped in a jump, thrown over a jump, those things come back to haunt you when you get older, just so y'all all know. And so I had suffered, with back pain a long time. And so I had back surgery and, I had bolts and screws and all that. So the riding is not something that I probably would ever do just because I don't want to take a chance on messing that up and having to go through that pain again. So that's why I am showing the halter horses now.
Yeah, definitely a little safer.
Yes, a lot safer.
I know. They say the hardest thing about riding and training horses is the ground, and they're not wrong.
Exactly.
Oh, and you just had a recent win, right? And in 2022, you had a level 2 championship with, oh my gosh, I can't remember this horse's name.
Unmeasured, maybe?
Yes.
Okay,
it was
yeah.
Unmeasured. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, he's a really nice horse, and I still have him.
Oh, neat.
And my husband shows him, and I show him. And the horse trainer always says, okay, you do the select, you do the amateur, or which, whatever year. So he told my husband to do the select that year, and I did the amateur. And my husband actually won the world championship with that horse, and I didn't. And I was like, that's not fair.
Got to sting just a little bit.
Yeah.
You're just a good teacher.
I know. I'm like, huh. So, so I did win the level 2, but I've alluded to win the world championship in halter yet. So anyway, but that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to stand for long. You hold the other record.
I don't know. I'm not really sure I'm going to stay in the halter world.
Okay.
So I've actually thought about maybe, because I can't ride, is maybe get a pleasure driving horse.
Oh, fun.
So, because I used to do the pleasure driving. So I've thought about that. So that might be something in the future that I'll do. But so, I've been doing the halter, a few years. Yeah. And, I've had some great success in it. Just personally haven't won a world championship.
Yeah, I know. Hey, time is going to come around for you. So I love that. I have full faith. Awesome. So looking back on all the horses that you've gotten to be with, is there one quality that they all shared that you're like, wow, this is what makes or breaks an all-around horse?
I just think, of course, whenever I would look for a horse, and, buying young horses, which is mostly what I did. And first I would look for pretty. I always wanted a pretty horse because I always said, if I have to look at it, it has to be pretty. So pretty was real important, but also their movement. Because when you're buying, say, a weanling or a yearling, really all you're looking for is just seeing them run in the pasture and, trying to see their movement. And typically you can kind of get an idea, sometimes not 100%. It's not like buying a horse that's already going and riding. So it was always a bit of a challenge because, I had horses, people would say, every horse you have is like really nice. Did you ever have any bad ones? I said, yes, you just didn't see the bad ones because I would sell them before I went any further with them because I would have some that I could see didn't have the potential to do what I wanted to do with them. Right. So those I would sell before I would try to put all the work in to do the all around with them.
Right.
But just the movement, and like I said, when they're that age, you really don't know if they're good minded or not.
Right.
And that's where some horses are tougher than others, and learning how to deal with each personality of each horse is it's challenging, but I mean, every horse is different. So you have to learn to train for that particular horse to make it work for you.
Yes, it takes a lot to have a successful horse just in one event.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in every podcast that we do, we ask our interviewee what a good horse means to them. What qualities define a good horse? So, Karen, what qualities define a good horse to you?
I think a good horse is one that, of course, being good-minded is always a plus. It's much easier to work with horses that are good-minded, meaning they're very willing to learn and will take the training without much controversy, and will, kind of easy to work with.
Right.
Always, I think, pretty horses are better than non-pretty horses. And then, of course, their movement. Their movement is paramount in this world. And, depending on the event, but always a good mover is going to be better for no matter what event that you do.
Yes, form to function is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any horses we missed or any stories we missed that you'd like to cover?
So the article was, he was 17-2.
Oh my
He was
goodness.
huge. So I did not do any Western events with him. I did do the performance halter with him, but he was a phenomenal English horse. We did all the fence stuff. I did all the English events with him, the pleasure driving, and he was the one that I did not win the all around with, which is. And actually, by that time, I was doing the select. So I really was trying to win, the select with him. But that was the one I never got to win with. And then we ended up selling him. But that was okay. But yeah, he was actually the last one that, well, actually, he asked me for details I showed. At my very last Select World show, doing the all around stuff, which was 2009, right? Wasn't that right?
I believe so. Hey, it was just yesterday.
Yeah, I know. When you were like, "What's your buckle?" and I was like, "Oh my gosh." Yeah, that's where I was like, oh gosh, that was a long time ago. That was a real long time ago.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. So again, from all of these horses, is there one that you could ride or you wish you could ride one more time?
I would have to say that'd be ask me for details.
Yeah, he seems like he was the most special.
He was the most special to me.
Yeah.
He was just the most willing and fun. He was a little bit lazy, but he also had a spark to him.
Okay.
And to be able to jump that horse again, he was such a phenomenal over fences horse that I would love to be able to do that again.
Oh, I love that. So do you still get butterflies or any type of nerves when you go into the arena? Or did you ever get nerves?
Oh my goodness, yes, I would get nervous. I would get nervous every time I went in the ring.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all about channeling that nervousness. And I tell people this a lot is showing at this level because everybody pretty much they have to qualify to come here now. Yeah. So the horses and the exhibitors are all really good. And what gets a lot of people is the mental part of this because everybody is qualified, but when they get to this level and the pressure, a lot of people can't handle the pressure, and I've seen that before. I remember one year it was neck and neck with this other girl for the all around, and it came down to her very last class, and all she had to get was like a 5th, and she would have beat me for the all around that year.
Oh man.
And she made a huge mistake in her last class. And to me, I think that could have been a mental part,
Right.
and I've seen people that like mentally it's a challenge.
Of course.
And it's just learning how to mentally challenge that. And I have a very dear friend that's still showing, and I used to coach her back, several years ago, and she struggled with that. And I always, it's a lot of self-talk. I mean, I never really had anyone teach me that, but I remember um, when you get ready to do your routine, and I incorporated and get ready to do an event, is to see yourself every single set, like close your eyes and see yourself walking into the arena, and every single step of that course or that pattern, and see yourself on that horse doing it absolutely perfectly. And just getting that what it feels like to do it perfect and seeing yourself doing that, in your mind. And that will give you confidence, like, I can do this.
It's like you've been there before.
Yeah, exactly. But it's seeing
Visualization.
yourself doing it absolutely perfect. And that's what I would do. I would like mentally, that's how I prepare myself. So I wouldn't have any like, oh, this could happen. Try not to have any bad thoughts. Always think about the positive of
Right.
every step of your ride.
Oh,
And that really, that was a good mental,
yeah.
a good mental thing to do. And so yeah, that's the mental part is a huge part of this game
Of
for sure.
course. Of
But yeah, I
course.
used to get nervous all the time. I don't really get nervous doing the halter now.
Mhm.
I did right at first because it was new, but once you do it a time or two,
Yeah.
then it's not like the riding classes at
Yeah.
all. So
So you mentioned that you were mentoring some of your friends. Is this something that you still do or still enjoy, or that?
well, I have this one person I'm talking about. She still shows, and she still calls me all the time. And she's here showing. I wasn't here for a lot of her classes, but she always calls me, and I watched her online before we got out here, and
Yeah.
um, and I don't necessarily mentor them. I just, talk to them. Or, if she asked me, she told me she's showing in pleasure driving on Friday, and she's like, you better be sitting on that rail. But yeah, it's, I've got a few that I just, I love. And, they're still showing, and, I used to teach them. And so, of course I don't do that anymore. But
Right.
anyway, they still, let me know how they're doing, or I watch them, at shows and stuff. So,
Aw.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's just cool to see how much of a full circle moment this has been for you. I mean, dreaming of being in the shoes of an all around, and now you're the record holder for this. It's just wow. So one more question. I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, championship mindset, because I love what you were talking about just a minute ago. Do you have any advice for anyone who is aspiring to be an amateur all around one day, just to really grip that champion mindset and handling the pressure?
Well, first you have to decide, because, now, and even then, but even more now, so many of the classes are very specialized. I used to do the horsemanship on 17-hand horse, and you know, you don't see that much anymore because the style of the horse is a little different than it was to actually even say in the horsemanship or Western riding. I did the Western riding, but on a lot of the horses that I had that were more English type, I didn't show with the World Show in Western riding because I knew they wouldn't be competitive, and it was kind of a waste of energy and time. But deciding really the events you like to do,
Yeah.
and just finding a horse that would be capable of doing it, and then training them to do the events. I mean, that's the hardest part, is training them all the different events,
Yeah.
and it's one event at a time. A lot of events are similar, but just, finding that horse that would take you to that level. And if you personally don't have the eye to find a horse like that, find a reputable horse trainer that can help you. And of course, a trainer that is diverse in a lot of different events to help you learn and be successful in all the different events that you want to do.
Right.
And that's really the whole process and how to make that work, and just, making sure that they know that's your goal.
Yeah.
It's always about setting that goal,
Right.
and just like I was talking early on about Luann Nost, I was like, and it was Luann Paul at the time, but what is the process? Like, I remember thinking, what do I have to do to
Mhm.
achieve that?
Right.
It's finding the right horse and finding the people that can help you
Mhm.
work towards that
Right.
to achieve that goal.
Right. Without the steps to get there, I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
yeah.
It is. It's all a process.
Right.
All a process.
Right. And probably more than anyone that World Show is a marathon. Like it takes you have to definitely take it day by day. So what's your secret for surviving World Show, especially being an all around?
Right. Well, it's interesting because basically it was one event at a time.
Okay.
Like I would do one event and focus on that. And as soon as I was done with that, I would start thinking about prepping for the next event, whether it be that day or the next day or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting because I remember people saying, well, how are you standing for the all around? And I would say, I don't know. And they're like, oh, yes, you do. I said, no, I really don't.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't want to know, because literally I would take it one class at a time and try to be the best and be prepared in each different event.
Yeah.
I didn't want to know because that adds pressure.
Right.
Like I've got to perform. That adds pressure. So trying to get the pressure off of yourself. So if you just focus on your task that day or the next day and try to be the best prepared and be the best you can on that particular day or that particular event, then move to the next one. So instead of trying to look at the whole picture, obviously my goal was to win the all around, but it's every event. You've got to try to be the best you can in every event, or you're not going to win the all around.
Right.
And, to win the all around, you don't have to be the world champion in every single event. You just need to be consistent and be one of the, top 5, if you can.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the most important, is try not to just focus on, the all around, even though in the back of your mind, that. It's making sure you're preparing for each event and then start thinking about the next event.
Yeah. So what makes your story even more fascinating is that, of course, you had an actual job and had to choose between your job and horse showing. I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I married my first husband, he was working. I was working. I was a buyer for a department store in Nashville, and he saw how much I was not happy in that I was having to do like what regular people with a job do, work all week and then, leave Friday and go to the horse show on Saturday and Sunday and then come back and go back to work. And it was not really what I love to do. And I had the most wonderful husband. And he says to me one day, he said, if you're not happy doing this and you just want to show your horses, then quit your job so you can go show your horses like you want to. So at the time, I was kind of freaking out, going, oh my gosh, I don't know if that's what we should do, because how are we going to afford that? And he worked really hard. He was a builder and worked really hard. And he said, if that's what's going to make you happy. Because you know what they say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
That's true. Preach.
Anyway, yeah, that's what I was able to do. So, I mean, he stayed home and worked. The horses I had at home, he took care of the horses at home. Not many people would do that. I mean, that's the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
And he allowed me to chase my dreams. And, for several years, he was not able to come to the World Show. And I would call him on the phone and going, here's what I'm doing, or I won, and, all that. And then we got to a point in our lives where he could afford to take off and come with me, which was wonderful. And then we got to a point where we were close to being able to retire, and he was he kind of went with me full time. And that was some of the best, years of my life, when we got to travel and show. And he was, if you talk to some people, he was never met a stranger. Everybody loved him at the horse shows. And I'm going to tell a funny story about this. So one year we're here, and I can't remember the exact classes, but it may have been like showmanship, and the very next class was pleasure driving. It was a Western event and then pleasure driving. I remember that. And I wanted my horse banded for the Western class, and then I wanted braided for the driving.
Okay.
So we had two people standing in the warm-up area braiding the horse. I run to go get my clothes changed, and they weren't going to like wait. They were like, we're moving right on with it. We're dragging the ring, we're moving on. And we're like, I don't know if we're going to make it. And my husband, Don, said, don't worry, you're making it in that ring. He said, if I have to fake a heart attack and go lay right there where you go in, he said, I will, but they will wait for you.
That's so funny.
That's the kind of person. He was hysterical, and he would have done it.
There you go. So loyal.
Yeah, I know he was. He was definitely my biggest fan.
No.
Very, very biggest fan for sure.
That's really special. I love
Yeah.
that. So looking back on your career, I mean, you've always started with the weanlings and brought them up. I mean, that is incredible. Not many people can do that. So can you just tell us about the philosophy behind this?
Well, the philosophy behind that was the fact that I couldn't afford to buy a more expensive horse. And, when I was younger, my parents would, buy my horses. And then once I got married, it was on me and my husband. And quite frankly, we couldn't afford to go out and buy a made horse. So we would, that's when I started buying the weanlings and a yearling here and there, because that's all really we could afford. And kind of what I said before, you don't really know for sure if that horse is going to work out.
Right.
But I really didn't have a choice. I made it work because I couldn't afford to go buy a different horse.
Mm-hmm.
So we, just took the horse that I had. I would train it and basically make it work.
Right.
And, like I'd said before, I mean, some of them didn't work out, so I didn't keep them. But, when I first started, the ones that I bought, they basically had to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just finding the one that you think will work and then working with whatever personality that they have to make it work.
Yeah. It's like you had no choice. You're like, this is the dream. We're going with it.
Exactly. And that, and it's definitely probably a harder road,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, I mean, we didn't have the money to go buy a horse.
Right.
It was like you buy, I mean, at the time, spend $5,000, $6,000 on a weanling and hope that it works.
Right.
Or make it work. One way or the other, I was like, it's got to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it work.
As they say, smooth seas don't make a skilled sailor.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's a much longer process, obviously, than buying something that's already going.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I would have one, and then in a couple of years, I would get another one.
Oh.
So I kind of had, when I'd sell one, then I had one getting ready to come up and start.
Yeah.
So I kind of spaced it out.
Had a strategy.
Yeah, I had a strategy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a couple of years that I didn't really have one, and I had to wait out like a year or two before that one was really ready. But then I tried to have a backup, one coming along each couple of years. Mm-hmm. So when I sold one, and, that was the thing, you bring them up, you show them, and then when they're won the most, and they're the most valuable.
Right.
So then I had the money to go buy some other, and I had the money to keep showing.
There you go.
And, to buy another, weanling or yearling.
Right. Horsewoman, businesswoman.
Yeah, there you go. Because it was really, I did it as a business.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of the strategy.
So, of course, with the good ones, there's always a few that are a little bit more challenging. So, how did you navigate those horses that even though you'd spent a lot of effort and time and money in, but you just knew they weren't going to be a standout? How did you go about that?
Well, I decided that if I could see early on if they were going to be the quality enough to compete at this level. Mm-hmm. And not every horse is. So, for me, rather than, I would start them get them going. And once they kind of got to a point where I'm trying to teach them more, you can sort of tell whether they're going to be able to make it or not.
Right.
And that the quality of the horse would be the determining factor, and also the mental part. Later on, if they were mentally not where I wanted them to be, I didn't want to put the extra effort in as I got older.
Right.
But it basically just when I realized this horse was not going to be good enough to compete at this level. So then I would just sell them and cut my losses and move on.
There you
And sometimes I wouldn't lose money, but I wouldn't necessarily make money on the horse. But it was just when I could just see they weren't going to work for this level. And I remember I had one horse that I paid more for as a weanling than any horse that I ever bought.
Oh.
And this horse, as a 2-year-old, was wonderful. I won at the NSBA World Championship with this horse. And after that show, it was time to start teaching it more things to be the all-around horse. And this horse was not good-minded. And I remember every time I would ask it to do something, it would rear up and hang a right.
Oh, no.
I mean, it'd rear up and then just take off. And I tried and tried. I sent it to this person that worked on a cattle ranch. And I'm like, this horse is no use to me. And sent it down there. He came back thin, which he told me it would be. And I brought him back, and that horse was a soldier. And I was like,
Wow.
yes. Well, as soon as he started putting weight back on, he reverted right back to the way it was. And finally, I was like, I'm not dealing with this anymore because I don't like getting hurt. When you get older, nobody likes to get hurt. But as you get older, you get a little less like, oh, gosh, it takes harder.
It's a liability.
Longer to heal.
Yeah.
So I actually gave that horse to somebody that actually took him and did really good with him. But I said, just come get him because I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Right.
So that was, it gets to those point where it's like, it's not worth it, And fortunately, the earlier horses that I didn't really have a choice, they were going to have to work. They weren't like that, so they ended up working. But there were a few later on that were, as I call them, they were rejects for me.
There you go. I love that. So there's obviously been a lot of lessons that you've learned from horses. And what's just that one overarching lesson that you've learned from American Quarter Horses that no person could have ever taught you?
Oh, my goodness. I love typically the quarter horse mind, and I truly love how versatile they are. There's other breeds that obviously, are versatile, but I love the fact that they can do so many different events.
Yeah. And of course, you're the perfect person to attest to that. Done it all. Awesome.
Yeah.
So before you go into the show pen, do you have any lucky charms, any superstitions, rituals for show day that you do?
Well, I never really had any lucky charms, and I always tried to tell myself that I wasn't superstitious. However, it was really interesting because the way I would sat on my horse and get the horse ready had to be done exactly the same every time.
Yeah.
I mean, but and the whole mental part of going through that over in my head, but not necessarily. I never really had a certain like I had to do this. I just tried to do everything pretty much the same in my preparation of getting ready, just because that makes you. To me, it takes the stress off, of not doing things out of order, because I'm very like I want things to be the same. I don't like change. So making sure it's all done exactly the same each day before I got ready to show, that was probably the only really thing that I did.
Yeah, exactly the same. No surprises. Just go out there and do what you know how to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Is there anything we missed? Anything you want to
Oh
talk
my goodness.
about?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, I guess that's really it.
Yeah, I mean, this has been so fun. I mean, I've loved getting to learn more
Aw.
about your legacy. I mean, I was already a Karen fan before this, but
Oh,
now
you're
I'm really,
sweet.
really one. So thank you for taking
Yeah,
your time.
well,
And
thank you for asking me. I feel honored that y'all asked me. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Good Horses, Stories of the American Quarter Horse. Because behind every great rider, breeder, or trainer, there's always a good horse. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story.